Hi, in this video we're going to go over the select and mask feature, following up on what we learned about doing selections and masks for pixel layers in the last video in the last module. So let's go ahead and get started with some of the things you know. I have open here a file with a photo of a geyser field in Iceland and a very handsome young bull in Grizzly Island. And I actually want to take the bull and I want to put him into this geyser field. So first of all, what I want to do is actually make a mask of the bull. And I'm going to go ahead and unlock this initial layer. And actually I'll do a Command J. And we'll just put this extra layer of the bull up here. Now, I did pick this, I want to let you know, because the initial selection here is pretty easy. The bull is very sharp and focused. He's really dark. He's on a light background. So I can actually very quickly, as you might recall, I can just use our favorite tool, the quick selection tool. And it should actually select that bull quite easily, and it did. So that was pretty easy, a 2 or 3 second selection. Doesn't even look like I need to adjust it initially. I'm going to add a layer mask, and voila, we have this fabulous bull in a geyser field in Iceland. But now, if you go a little bit closer, let's just zoom in. You're going to notice that although it looked good initially and it was really easy to do, that there's actually a lot of kind of choppiness up here. It's kind of the quick selection tool cut off some of the hairs. It left a lot of the background in between the hairs. This is a selection job that is not for our normal selection tools. It would be almost unimaginable to go in and try to actually pick up each of these individual hairs. So this is a great time to go to a more advanced tool called Select and Mask, more advanced feature. Now there's a few ways you can get there. You see that Select and Mask, if I'm on a mask, if I'm on a regular pixel layer, you'll notice that it doesn't necessarily, it is showing up. It sometimes, oh, on certain tools, sorry. If I'm on a selection tool, it's going to show up. If I'm not on a selection tool, it's not going to show up. So I actually need to be on a selection tool. I want to go to the mask and select the mask, not the pixel layer, but the mask. And I want to actually click Select and Mask. And we're going to open up in this entirely different window. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out so you can see the selection. Now I want to show you around this window. There's a lot going on here. And it's all useful, but not necessarily always useful all the time. But I want you to see everything that's available. Right now it's defaulted into a view of the mask white on black. And that just happens to be the last way that I looked at this. But you can see if you click at the very top on the view mode, you have a bunch of different options for how you want to look at this. Now, the tools are going to do the same thing no matter which view you're on. It's just that some views are going to be more useful than others in order to see what you're doing. I tend to work, I'll go through them. I tend to work in black and white or on layers, but we'll start up at the top. This is onion skin. And the onion skin layer is most useful if you adjust the transparency. It's not necessarily going to be the best thing for this. So what you can see is that we have a little bit of the geyser field and also the field, but there's not a lot of distinction between the colors of the two. So this is not going to be very handy. Sometimes it is. Marching ants, by the way, is never handy. It's very imprecise, and no regular Photoshop user that I know ever does this. The overlay is actually quite a good selection tool. This puts a colored overlay on top. And if I just click out of this for a second, you can see right now it's green, which could work. I think it defaults when you first open it up, if you haven't adjusted it, it defaults to a kind of a red color. But you can see you can open the color picker and actually pick any color you want. This isn't going to stay permanently in your image. This is just a way to actually distinguish between your selection and what is not selected. And you can actually reverse that, although I usually just stay with the regular one. I do like this tool, and actually I'll start off in this view and then show you how things look in a couple other views. But let's go through all of them. You can actually just put it on a slightly darker background, on a slightly whiter background. This really depends on your preference and sometimes on the color of the object. This is just the looking at the actual mask, which is a view I often work in. Not everybody's comfortable there, and it doesn't work for everything. The final one is on the layers. And this one actually can also be extremely useful. This is how it looks now, and you'll be able to see the changes as you apply them. So let me show you a couple other settings, and then I'm going to show you a really magical tool, which is one of the best reasons to come into Select and Mask. But let's work down this menu on the right. The Smart Radius is handy. And if you turn it on and you click this radius over, maybe just no more than about 4 pixels to start. I've never had a situation where I needed to go up higher. And already, if you notice this, if I turn the Smart Radius on and off, you may see some subtle changes right away. But this is actually going to mostly affect what we're going to do with another tool later. You can click this down and go to the global refinements. You really, initially, we're not going to use these, but they can be really handy. I'll go ahead and go back and give you another view. I want you to actually look at the mask so you can see more obviously what these do. And I'm going to exaggerate each one of them. We're not going to use them in this tool because they're not necessarily useful, but sometimes they come up. Sometimes this is handy. This is a smoothing tool. And it'll take a second to respond. This is tool actually uses quite a lot of memory and juice, and so it can be a little bit slow. But you see that it just sort of smooths out those edges. I'll zoom in so we can see a little bit better. Let's come back up here so you can see that. So this is the smoothing tool. The feathering tool is exactly what you'd imagine. I've just zeroed out the smooth so we can see them separately. That feathers it out. That can be useful. It's absolutely not useful in this situation because it would give kind of a mushy halo. I can actually go down and show you on the layers how kind of mushy that would look. We don't like that. Let's go back to black on white. So we'll zero that out again. Contrast, usually you might actually use contrast along with feather. Contrast, just as you would expect, actually just sharpens and edges up the contrast. Doesn't show a lot here since this is already a fairly high contrast image. It can be useful, but usually in conjunction with other tools. The Shift Edge tool can be extremely useful, and I might use it later on in this demonstration. It actually just moves the selection a little bit in. See if it's responding. You might not be able to see it so well on this, or makes it bigger. And it doesn't look like it's responding so much. Let's see if I can exaggerate that. There we go. So that's much bigger, and this is much smaller. The use of this is not evident on this layer or at this point, but it's going to be more evident later. So I'm going to go ahead and take that back to 0. And start neutral. Okay, now over here we have a little minimal tool palette. This should look familiar to you. This looks like the main page, but it's far less going on. We actually have at the top, we have the regular brush tool. Come on. Oh, it's not going to give me my, there we go. This is the one that we're actually going to use. It's the Refine Edge tool. Let's see. Oh, there we go. This is a quick selection tool at the top. I don't use this a lot. I think someday it might be handy. This is the Refine Edge tool. That's what we're going to play with today. This is a regular brush tool, often really handy. I might combine that. Lasso tool, I think occasionally comes in handy for me. And the hand tool and the zoom tool, also handy. Up here, you notice that we also can control the hardness and the spacing of the brush, which can be very important. You can sample all layers, which we won't be doing in this. Also, you can say whether or not you're going to expand the selection layer or reduce the selection layer. This actually paints in white. This paints in black. So it's actually a very useful tool. Now I'm going to go to this Refine Edge tool. I'm going to go ahead and start with my brush. It's actually 100 and it's a little bit soft. And I think this will work for this edge. I'll do it first on here and then I'll try it in some other views so you can see the difference. So on this view, I'm going to come along this edge. You want to be sure that you have the middle of the circle of the brush outside. I want to brush, the brush is going to affect the refining of the edge, both outside and inside, anywhere in that little circle. So I'm going slightly in and also slightly out. And I'll zoom in just once more so you can really see what's going to happen here. So as I go along the edge, it's actually looking more carefully. Isn't that cool? And it's finding those hairs that are within that radius, both the ones that were inside and the ones that were outside. You want to be careful not to go in too far. Because this tool doesn't know that you might be on the edge of the bowl or on the inside of the bowl. So if you actually did it in here, you are going to start to make selections in there. And we clearly don't want anything in the middle of the cow or in the middle of the bowl to show through. We can just do a Command Z. So for what we're doing today, there's times when that's useful, but what we're doing today, we really just want to stay on the edge. And you can see how cool this is. It's actually magically pulling up the hairs so that we see these individual hairs. Let's go over to the On Layers so you can see the difference between how these are reacting. So this is the area that I've already done. This is the area that was made with the Quick Selection tool. And you can see how much better that is. So I'm just going to continue. I can work on this layer. It does the same thing, but you'll be able to see it happening really right directly. Now, if your brush is too hard, or your fine edge is too small, or your brush is too small or too big, you can get some kind of wacky results. So play around with the softness and the hardness of the brush if you feel like you're not getting what you need. This is calculated. I calculated the size of the brush based on how far I knew his fur was sticking out. Also, there's areas that you don't need to do. I look around and I go, oh, yeah, I do need to do that. Like, so for instance, I'm actually going to tuck in there because you can see I didn't go that far in to begin with. And there's a little bit of the background there. Now, this is the place that I did before. I'm just going to show you what would happen if you did that. Not really what we're looking for because we can now see the geyser field right through the middle of the cow or the bowl. So I'll just keep going on this. And I may not do the whole thing. I'm going to show you the shift edge really quickly. But I'll just keep going. This is an interesting spot because actually this is an area I know from looking at it before where the bull actually has a little bit of his fur is actually the same color as the background. In this case, you could actually go in, grab your brush tool, and just paint that area of the mask back in. Let's see, looking good down here. Go back. Now we have a little bit of a halo, and that's where the shift edge is going to come in handy. I'm going to show you that. Yeah, it's actually going pretty quickly. Sometimes even with the Refine Edge tool, you get what we call a halo, just a little bit of that background color from the original image showing through. Yep. Go back here. This is a particularly snarky little spot. We have to go over it twice. There we go. Look at that. Even the little dandelions are showing through the back. Now, I will warn you that this doesn't work on everything, and you're going to be beholden to the contrast of a scene, the colors behind, and all of that. Now, this looks awfully good. I'll show you really quickly zooming out. So much better than before. So much better, so much more realistic and precise. But we do have, you can see, especially when we zoom out, just a little bit of this halo. And that is what I mentioned. That's where the shift edge can be really handy. I'm just going to shift the head edge like minus 25%. Actually, let me zoom in and do this again. So I want you to see it. I'm going to show you down here where the edge is a little less obvious. So let's go back. Let's actually go the other direction. We'll add a little bit, and you can see that the edge of the mask comes out. If I go the other way, it tucks in and hides less. So this actually can be a very handy little tool just to take care of some of the rest of that. Doesn't compromise the delicacy of the hairs and all of that. It just kind of tucks things in a little bit. Especially on smooth areas, it just takes away a little bit of that glow. Okay, output. This is normally what you're going to do in this situation. You have some options. You can do a new layer, a new document. Normally, we're just going to do it onto the layer mask. That's because we're just adding to that. We click OK. It goes back to our layers. And there we go. That's Select and Mask.